Hello and welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So, in this episode I'll be discussing Disney's 1973 animated classic, animated adventure classic I suppose, Robin Hood, watched as part of our family film night series, if you like, with this being Disney's 21st animated classic. The movie is based on the English tales of the heroic Robin Hood, who, legend has it, robbed the rich to give to the poor in the areas around Sherwood Forest near Nottingham in England. Now, there's no actual definitive history on Robin Hood. He is a fictional character for all intents and purposes. If in fact he really did exist or not, this is the thing. Historians believe that he may in some form have actually existed, potentially, or very commonly it's believed that he may be an amalgamation of a number of characters that kind of did exist. But the facts are sketchy, and at the very least, and the stories have kind of turned and twisted through time. One thing has always endured, however, the fundamental ethos of Robin Hood, taken from the rich to give to the poor. Disney, of course, picks up on the many tales of Robin Hood and uses their own artistic license, as they do, in only the way that Disney could, with a varied range of animals taking the roles of our famous hero, his friends, and the townsfolk of Nottingham. The story is told in part by Alan Adale, a rooster troubadour, as voiced by Roger Miller, who kind of narrates sections of the film as we're going along, using song and rhymes as his tools. We are then introduced to Robin Hood, a fox, as voiced by Brian Bedford, and his trusty sidekick, Little John, a bear, as voiced by Phil Harris. In fact, Little John is actually a recreation of the jazz-loving and laid-back bear Baloo from Disney's own 1967 film, The Jungle Book, also voiced by Phil Harris. It's almost as if they are actually one and the same. And I believe that was intentional. Robin Hood is portrayed as a master of disguise in the film, which, to be fair, some historians do actually believe that he could have been. Sometimes a highwayman, sometimes an aristocrat, and so on. And then he kind of uses his cunning to rob Prince Richard, a gangly, kind of cowardly lion, as voiced by Peter Ustinov, who, in fact, played Blackbeard in the superb 1968 Disney live-action movie Blackbeard's Ghost. Thus, then setting in motion a need for Prince Richard to get his revenge on Robin Hood, and so along with his royal advisor, Sir Hiss, as voiced by Terry Thomas, he concocts a number of cunning, but potentially harebrained schemes in order to bring him out into the open and trap him. Prince John also proceeds to hike the taxes for the people of Nottingham, unscrupulously collected by the Sheriff of Nottingham, a wolf, as voiced by Pat Buttram. And when they can't pay, they're thrown in jail, including the local church ministry, Friar Tuck, a badger as voiced by Andy Devine, who Prince John orders to be executed. In answer to which, Robin Hood hatches his own daring plans to steal back the taxes taken from the people of Nottingham and save Friar Tuck and the rest of the townsfolk. Whilst all this is going on, Robin Hood is also trying to rekindle his romance with long-time love Maid Marian, a vixen, as voiced by Monica Evans. So, now, yes, with all this going on in one movie, you would be forgiven for thinking that it was action-packed, right? Well, let me explain. The film is actually believe it or not, one of my own personal favourites from the early years of the Disney Classics range. Absolutely. Along with the likes of Basil, The Great Mouse Detective, and The Sword and the Stone, the kind of my core three from that era. But even I must admit that this is not one of their most noteworthy entries. It's not quite your typical Disney epic, and it does take a more low-key approach throughout. It's not quite as punchy as some of their earlier Disneys, but the story itself does have more depth than most, which, to be fair, is probably one of the reasons why I do like it so much. It is a lovely film at heart, with a fantastic story and a great set of characters, absolutely. It doesn't rely too much on slapstick, and unlike some of the other Disneys, it does actually seem to be aimed at a more mature audience. It is, if I'm honest with myself, however, quite a droll film, all told. It never really gets going. It doesn't really do anything. And it only has like a few mild jokes and action sequences in it. It is actually more of a romantic take on the Robin Hood story than an action-packed one. It's not the swashbuckling adventure you think it should be based on the source material available. The music doesn't quite stand out either as being the most iconic, but there are quite a few quaint little ditties along the way, which are a mix of kind of merry old England style movements with I thought, a New Orleans twist. I thought, well, at certain points, at least to my ears, it also had that kind of typical 1970s sound, especially for the more romantic scenes. All of this then together kind of gives the film quite a depressing feel at times, which is kind of somewhat out of place for Disney. Most of their films, even when the movie does get dark, they have other scenes which kind of then significantly contrast against this. However, Robin Hood, although not all doom and gloom, never really contrasts that much. And so in this respect, giving it a very dull and very grey feel overall. Additionally, I did kind of find that the animation looks like it was only kind of half finished and is a little rough around the edges, which is quite noticeable at certain points in the movie. I mean, for quite a star-studded cohort of actors lending their voices to the characters in this film, including one of my own personal favourites from the era, Terry Thomas, it is a bit disappointing that Disney didn't make more from the story of Robin Hood, or a better motion picture experience to capture and utilise the talent and the materials that they had at their disposal. It just never really meets expectations, if I'm honest. The film does borrow quite a lot from previous movies, most definitely, and certainly, in particular, as briefly tipped on earlier, Disney's 1967 feature, The Jungle Book, not least for the total copy of Baloo into Little John, but also for Sir Hiss, who is very, very similar to Kaa, the Indian python from the same movie. But more so, overall, the characters, like the whole kind of set of characters and the way it feels, especially Prince Richard and his royal cohort, and just some of the general themes of the movie, especially the royal games that are played, that are meant to entice Robin Hood out of hiding, always do remind me of the animation sequences when the characters go to the island of, let me say this right, Nabumbu, in Disney's 1971 live action and kind of animation feature, Bedknobs and Broomsticks. After all I have said about the film, I have been racking my brains, I really have, trying to understand what I actually do like about it so much that keeps me coming back. it is quite odd that I just can't really put my finger on it for some reason. Perhaps it is because it does aim towards an older audience. But then I have enjoyed this since I was little. Perhaps I've always kind of liked the idea of Robin Hood. I'm not sure. Overall, it is a nice story. I think that's probably what captures me in more than anything. Which it just perhaps isn't executed with Disney's usual forte. It's simply just nothing new or exemplary, and it never really takes off. It's charming. It's a charming entry nonetheless, and definitely worth a watch. It could just have been so much more, I think. Anywho, that brings me to the end of this episode. Thank you very much for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, and other movie-related content. We've loved having you here at SciFirst MovieTalk, and we would definitely like to have you return. But most of all, thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.